Hi, everybody. Back with Sir Anthony Buzzard on Quick Bytes, our new format. So we have a quick one here, Anthony, on tithing in the churches. So as we know nowadays, a lot of churches, a lot of pastors are asking, or I think it's been tradition for the longest time that in Christian churches, tithing is the tithing of the Old Testament is continued to this day.
Yes,
I don't know how old that is, by the way. I don't know if you know. So can you tell us about tithing when it comes to Christianity? Are we supposed to tithe?
this is a big topic, as we know from our recent travels in Nicaragua. It's about the only thing they wanted to talk about. I'd never heard of tithing in the Church of England, but I didn't hear much about many biblical doctrines. Mathematical tithing, if by that you mean 1/10 exactly, is part of the Old Covenant in the letter. There's also a second tithe, another tenth of your gross income, which you store up so that you can go to the feast. That's quite clear. There are two tithes, very possibly a third tithe every third year. It's not quite so clear. But mathematical tithing is for the support of the Levitical priesthood. That's entirely clear. However, in the New Testament, I don't think Paul ever spoke of tithing in the letter, the mathematical tithing, because that's under the Old Covenant. Paul is interested in the Torah of Messiah in the Spirit. The Torah of Messiah is not the same as the Torah of Moses. 2 Corinthians 11 makes that quite clear. Sorry, 2 Corinthians 3 makes that quite clear. So I don't think tithing is taught in the New Covenant. I do think that giving generously to a cause that you believe in is wonderful and fine. And the rich people, Paul particularly says in Timothy, should be generous with their money. That's perfectly good. However, to use the text in Malachi and then to dump that on the new covenant people and make them feel guilty, I think is quite wrong. Why are you robbing God? We read that in Malachi. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse. We read that in Malachi. But then we also read in Malachi in chapter 4, remember the whole law of Moses. Well, you can't have one without the other. So if you're going to insist on tithing from that one passage in the Old Testament, then you must insist on keeping the whole law of Moses, and that would defeat the entire point of the New Covenant. So giving generously, key text for me would be 1 Corinthians 9:18, by the way, when we get through that one. You've got it there. 1 Corinthians 9:18, Paul is keen to tell the Corinthians there that he'd offered his services entirely free, without charge. Does that mean he had taught them tithing? I don't think so. No, he says he has a right to be paid. He has a right to recompense financially even, but he didn't take advantage of that. He hadn't taught them tithing. So mathematical tithing, I think, is not a New Testament doctrine. Giving generously certainly is.
Right. So we have 9:18.
Mm-hmm.
Then what reward do I have? It is the opportunity to preach the gospel without charging for it, not demanding
Yes.
my rights as a worker for the gospel.
Yes. There's another point, Carlos, and that is that we find Paul in the Timothy saying that the one who preaches the gospel, works at the word of the gospel, is worthy of double honor. That's actually being paid. So you can pay your pastor if you have that ability. If you don't, and he wants to work for practically nothing or nothing at all, that's a perfectly good choice too. Circumstances will vary, but it's not wrong to be paid to do the gospel, provided you are giving good service. However, I don't think mathematical tithing should ever be pleaded, especially not from the book of Malachi, where it would involve you immediately in keeping the whole law of Moses. And we know that the whole law of Moses in the letter, as distinct from the spirit of the Torah of Messiah, mentioned twice in Galatians, that's what we're under today. In the spirit, the Torah of Messiah. Paul says clearly in that passage in 1 Corinthians 9, I think it is, he clearly says, I'm not under the law, but I'm within the law of Messiah. The Torah of Messiah in the spirit, not a question of letter, it's a question of spirit. People plead the 10 Commandments even in the letter. That doesn't work either, because then you'd have to keep the Sabbath on the 4th as according to the fourth commandment. So it's not a question of letter of the law, it's a question of the spirit of the law and the Torah of Messiah, mentioned twice by Paul.
Right. So 1 Corinthians 9, to the Jews I became like a Jew in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became like a man under the law.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously Torah.
Yes.
In order to win those under the law, although I myself am not under the law.
Exactly.
And then to those who do not have the law, I became like a man who does not have the law, in order to win those who do not have the law. However, I am not free from God's law, but I'm subject to the Messiah's law, or the law of Messiah.
That's right.
Right. So he's not lawless. He have obviously. Just quickly, Anthony, before we wrap up, the quick bite. What do you say to some might use this passage in Matthew 23? So Jesus says, "What an appalling disaster is coming on you, religious teachers and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You pay a tithe of mint, aniseed, cumin, but you neglect the vital aspects of the law. Doing right, showing mercy, exercising faith." Now, obviously, the subject here is Torah.
Yes.
Yes, you should pay your tithe, but do not forget these other things. What do you advise?
Well, he's talking to the Pharisees under the law there. That's right for them. But if you're going to insist on that for the whole of the Christian church forever, then you should be tithing on the vegetables. So that text must not be used to contradict the obvious fact that Paul did not teach tithing. Jesus himself in Mark 7:19 says that the food laws are no longer binding. Jesus himself in Matthew 12 says that the Sabbath can be broken in the new covenant, because there were people in the old, like David, and those who worked in the temple as Levites on Saturday, they were not bound by the Sabbath law. There you have then indications of Jesus, which were developed later in Paul, about how the Torah of Moses is not for us today. So that one text cannot be used to destroy the evidence of the massive number of texts. He's speaking strictly to the Pharisees who are under the law, and within the terms of the law of Moses, they should indeed have been tithing properly, and they weren't doing it.
Right, and that one text, if you use that one Matthew 23:23, against pretty much the whole of the Pauline letters, then Paul is inevitably a false apostle, because he's obviously teaching against Torah. So if you use the one text by Jesus out of context, then all right. So that was Quick Bites, everybody. Remember to visit our YouTube page. And by the way, Bob Warren did a study on this back in 2015. You can find that Bible study, biblical tithing, giving part 1. And Anthony also did one on 2014, tithing in the New Testament. All right, everybody. Thank you.